All right, I want you to think about this for a second. Is the 250-year American empire actually reaching its expiration date? I know, it's a massive, heavy question. But to unpack it, the source material anchors us in this fascinating 1976 study by British General Sir John Glubb. So Glubb analyzed 11 different empires throughout history. We're talking everyone from the Persians all the way up to the British Empire, and he found this literally mind-blowing pattern. Regardless of their geography, their tech, or their politics, they all lasted, wait for it, approximately 250 years. So, do the math with me. The United States was founded in 1776. Add 250 years to that, and you land exactly on 2026. The sweeping thesis we are exploring today suggests that right on cue, history's unforgiving clock is striking midnight.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to be objectively unpacking a super provocative thesis presented in our source material. We are looking at a massive predicted shift of global power. But it's not just moving from the west to the east, it's also shifting from the physical realm over to the completely digital realm. We're just exploring the arguments here, using our visuals to really break down this complex geopolitical and economic forecast so it's easy to digest.
So to make sense of all this, we'll trace the argument through 4 distinct phases. First, the 250-year empire cycle. Second, the battle between the dollar and digital gold. Third, how China, India, and the internet are changing the map. And finally, the rise of the network state.
Let's just jump right into Section 1, looking at the 250-year empire cycle and history's unforgiving clock.
According to the historical timeline we're looking at, 1991 was an absolutely pivotal year. The Soviet Union fell, India liberalized its economy, and the commercial internet was basically born. This kicked off what was famously called the unipolar moment, a period of total, completely uncontested American dominance. The 1990s were described as a vacation from history, a time when geopolitics kind of felt irrelevant compared to the dot-com boom and pop culture. But, as the source points out, that vacation ended pretty abruptly in 2001. And now, well, as we approach that 250-year mark in 2026, the argument is that this unipolar grip is noticeably shaking, and global influence is heavily fragmenting. To put that fragmenting into perspective, look at the top 4 economies when adjusted for the actual cost of living, what's known as GDP PPP. The list goes China, the USA, India, and Russia. 3 of those top 4 are firmly in Eurasia. Now, for much of recorded history, those megastates in the East actually had the complex dominant economies. The source argues that the era from 1945 to 1991, where the West held almost all the industrial power, basically because the rest of the world was devastated by war or communism, that was actually a historical anomaly. The global economy has essentially just rocketed back to its natural Eurasian center of gravity.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2, the dollar versus digital gold and the new currency battleground.
To really grasp the second pillar of this thesis, we have to completely reframe how we think about inflation. Drawing from Milton Friedman, the argument defines inflation not just as, paying more at the grocery store. It's actually a silent tax. Because the US dollar is the global reserve currency, meaning it's held by foreign nations, international businesses, billions of people worldwide. When the US prints more dollars, it doesn't just tax its own citizens. It silently dilutes the wealth of anyone, anywhere holding that currency. It is effectively global taxation without legislation. And here is the crucial data point to back that up. $3.3 trillion. That is the amount the U.S. has printed just since 2020. By doing so, the government essentially diluted all global holders of U.S.-denominated assets silently by roughly 10%. Think about that. When you have a centralized system that can instantly dilute the wealth of its users by 10% out of thin air, people are inevitably going to start looking for an exit. So, to understand what might actually replace or challenge that centralized financial system, the source breaks down the 4 fundamental jobs of a currency. You're probably familiar with the first 3, right? A medium of exchange to trade with, a store of value to save for tomorrow, and a unit of account to price goods. But the 4th one is the absolute most critical for our explainer today, the system of control. Who actually has the power to freeze the asset, dilute its supply, or just turn it off entirely? And that is exactly where cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, enters the geopolitical stage. Viewed through this lens, the thesis argues that Bitcoin acts as digital gold because it shares gold's best properties. It's scarce, it requires immense resources to mine, and it's easily verifiable, but it operates entirely digitally. And most importantly, it has a provably finite supply. It completely removes that system of control from any single nation-state, theoretically acting as a strict discipline against aggressive money printing.
Shifting gears to geopolitics, let's look at Section 3,
China, India, and the Internet, or what the source calls the Great Flanking.
I want you to think of global power as being split into two giant flanking movements right now. On one side, you have China rising to absolutely dominate the physical world. They are number one in manufacturing, steel, shipbuilding, electric cars. On the other side, the internet is overtly overtaking the digital realm, disrupting traditional media, redefining money with crypto, and transforming warfare with drones and cyber intelligence. The overarching thesis here elegantly maps the US as being caught right in the middle, facing intense physical pressure from China on one flank and vast digital disruption from the global internet on the other.
Meanwhile, we absolutely cannot ignore India in this equation. They are a distant but very, very real number two to China in terms of physical infrastructure. They're massively upgrading their capabilities. They currently rank second globally in smartphone manufacturing, second in cement production, and crucially, second in nuclear reactors under construction, specifically leveraging their massive thorium reserves to push for energy independence. But the source points out this incredibly fascinating dichotomy when you analyze India's true strength. The physical Indian state is rated as a solid 7 out of 10 right now. They're building rapid infrastructure and modernizing cities like Bangalore to arguably outpace traditional tech hubs. But the Indian diaspora, that global network of Indian talent leading major tech companies around the world, they are a perfect 10 out of 10. The analogy used is brilliant. If China is playing the world's best home game, the Indian network is playing the world's absolute best away game.
Which sets up our final section perfectly: the rise of the network state and the future of jurisdiction.
So what actually happens when physical jurisdictions begin to decline? Well, we are seeing a highly visible trend of top innovators and tech leaders quietly fleeing traditional hubs, places like California or Delaware. Why? The data points to increasing taxation, localized urban decay, and just a general growing sense that these historically safe physical jurisdictions are no longer providing the safety and stability required to build the future. So how does an individual even navigate a shift like that? The solution offered in the material involves a few highly specific steps for securing personal sovereignty. First up is mobility. For the diaspora, securing dual status documents like Overseas Citizen of India, or OCI cards. Second, securing financial privacy by utilizing digital wallets and privacy-focused coins like Zcash. And third, actively migrating your time, energy, and resources away from geographically bound systems and plunging into internet-first network communities.
And here's the crazy part. These internet communities aren't just staying online anymore. They are forming real-world physical footprints. Take the example of a network school currently operating in Malaysia. The source frames the concept perfectly. Network school is to network state as Chinatown is to China. It's a scale model. It's a group of people organizing digitally first and then crowdsourcing physical territory to live, learn, and build together. It acts as a literal, non-sovereign prototype for a future digital nation.
Ultimately, exploring all this material leaves us with a truly provocative question. If historical empires only last 250 years, and the old physical powers are being actively flanked by decentralized digital networks, will the next great nations be born entirely on the internet? Will geography even matter in the 22nd century? It's an absolutely fascinating lens through which to view our rapidly changing world. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning where the future is truly being built.